hello there, it's Jeff Cutter Diamond. Welcome you to yet another Reimagining Encyclopedia thing. We're doing highlights, we're doing now the playoffs, the records for most points and all that. So, most points by one team in a playoff game. Washington in 2017 in the playoffs took care of Atlanta 66-42. That was the game in which Kirk Cousins threw 4 touchdowns, 544 yards, outdoing Ryan, even though Ryan threw for 6 touchdowns because Washington could go on the ground with 5, Jones, Kelly, and Cousins. So 11 touchdowns in all. Well, there were field goals too. 1 field goal with 9 touchdowns. For Washington, Tampa second 59-7 win over St. Louis in the first round. Doug Williams with 5 touchdowns against Jim Hart, who tried his best, but the Cardinals tied it at 7, but somehow gave up 52 consecutive points. Eckwood, 153 yards per inning. Third place in points, 58 by Miami over Denver. Marino taking care of Elway, throwing for 6 touchdowns, 2 to Matt Moore, 1 to Clayton, 1 to Duper, 1 to Tony Nathan, and 1 to Hardy. Bruce Hardy, that is. January 85. Pittsburgh put up 55 points against Miami, January 79. Atlanta, 55, January 84. And then close to this with 55 points. Most points by both teams. Washington and Atlanta, that 66-42 game. 108, that was number 1. Number 2 was the championship games. Washington would face New England for the 2017 title and win 52-49. Hard to believe that Washington were involved in 2 games, the top 2 scoring games from back-to-back weeks. Cousins throwing for 7 touchdowns against Tom Brady's 5 touchdowns. They had to be El Perfecto in a sense. Carson 3 touchdowns, Davis 2, Crowder and Reed with a touchdown each. Number 3 was Kansas City's 52-38 crushing of Houston in the first round, as Mahomes took care of Deshaun Watson, throwing for 6 touchdowns, 3 to Tyreek Hill. That was the third highest game in history. Then you had an 88-point San Fran against St. Louis game as the Rams took care of the Niners. And then 86 points Minnesota against San Fran in 99. And then Denver, Minnesota, 83 points. I think that was the second highest scoring championship game. Fewest points both teams in their playoff game, 1937, Giants against the Bears, 3-0. Oakland beat the Raiders 1 game. The Bills 3-0 in 1981. On a third quarter goal, Chris Bear field goals. Plunkett and Ferguson both had troubles in the heavy snow. Miami 7-5 against the Raiders, January 1984. It was actually 5-0 in the Raiders before Woodley threw the Mark Duper for a touchdown. And then the Giants 7-5 over the Saints. Because Seahorn had a pick 6 off of Jeff Blake. Packers 13-0 in 93 over Philly. Favre took care of Cunningham. Harry Sidney with a touchdown there. And another 13-point game. Pittsburgh winning 7-6 in the fourth quarter on a touchdown from O'Donnell to Charles Johnson. And you had Pittsburgh with a 10-3 win over the Jets in 2002. Most points in a shutout. Playoff shutout 47 is Philly shutout Atlanta, the 03 playoffs. AJ Feely doing the job against Michael Vick. Crew, no McNabb, need it. Well, actually, yeah, I should give you more box score. Dawkins had a pick 6. Then Rams 37-0 shutout Detroit in 77, and then Denver's 35-0 shutout Minnesota to win the 1990 championship. Because that was the championship, right? And the losers are 35-0. Unbelievable. Points in a shutout, Giants 3-0, 3-0, 13-0 Packers. Most points in one half, Tampa Bay. 42 points in the first half against the Cardinals in that game. Bengals 41 points in 1988 playoff against the Jets, winning 55-7. And then Houston scoring 40 points in the first half against Oakland in the 2013 playoffs to win. Second half, 39 points Washington against San Francisco. They were down 21-6 in the 2013 playoffs, so they scored 39 points. Second place is 34 by the Rams, their second half against the Niners. And Seattle's 33 points in the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh to win the 2018 championship. Pittsburgh had it right in their hands, but man, sorry. Most points and a half by both teams. Kansas City and Houston in the first half, 63 points. Kansas City and Houston in that 52-38 KC win. Washington and Atlanta, that famous 6-42 game, 59 points in the first half. And the Jets-Denver 2001 playoffs. The Jets were up 35-21, and they won that game. Second half, Denver-Minnesota, the 99 final, that had 53 points in the second half. That was the second half. Seattle-Pittsburgh, 50 points in the second half to face each other in the championship game. And third was Washington-Atlanta. That's a 6-42 game, 49 points. Most points in one quarter by one team. Seattle's 33 points in the fourth quarter to take care of Pittsburgh in the finals, the 2018 finals. Tampa's 28 points in the second quarter against the Cardinals. St. Louis had 28 points in the fourth quarter to take care of San Francisco. Washington had 28 points to take care of San Fran in the 2013 playoffs. So yeah, 27 points in the second quarter for Denver. All that. First quarter. Anyone scored highest points in the first quarter? Seattle 24, 1984 against Kansas City 24 on their way to the 54-6 win. The most points in the quarter for both teams. 40 for Seattle-Pittsburgh in the fourth quarter, although Seattle had all but 7. Carolina-St. Louis, it was actually 10-10 to 3 quarters in that January 2000 game, but they went through 38 points, but St. Louis survived 31-27. Washington, New England in the championship game, 38 points in the first quarter, and then off to that 101 points. Second quarter, Oakland and Houston had 37 points combined in the 2013, and third quarter was Denver, Minnesota in the 99 final. Comebacks. Biggest comeback. Seattle down by 25 in the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh in the championship game. And somehow Russell Wilson survived. It was 32-7. And then for some strange reason, Pittsburgh, well, they did score to make it 39-14. But then Precisa touchdown run, and then Wilson to Madden for a touchdown. They went for 2 and missed. Then Wilson to Baldwin for a touchdown with a minute 38 left. And then with 33 seconds left, McEvoy from Russell Wilson, one of the greatest comebacks of all time. Packers were down by 20 against the Eagles in 1944 before winning the game. And the Broncos were down 20 to the Oilers and came back to win. It was 20-0 Houston. Warren Moon looked good, but they come back. See some 18-point comebacks. Most passing attempts in the playoff game, Roethlisberger 65 in the 2016 championship game against Arizona in a loss. Jared Goff 62 for the Rams at Seattle. I think that was one of the games. It was in 24-15. And Bernie Kosar 60 against San Francisco in the 88 championship game, and they still lost. Anderson had 58 pass attempts and lost. The highest pass attempts with a win, Marino's 56 in 1989 against Denver. Completions, Justin Haber 38 at Kansas City, and they lost 25-24. Goff 37 against Seattle, and they lost. Ken Anderson 36 against the Jets, and they lost. So Matty Ice for 36 and a loss. Cousins 36 and a win, and that was the 2017 championship game. And Matt Ryan, that was when they lost 66-42. Completion percentage, Drew Brees 90.3 against San Francisco, January 2020, winning 27-17. Then he had the second best against Chargers in the title game, in which the Saints won by 2 touchdowns, and then Jared Goff in that same game. Sorry, not the same game, but 2 weeks earlier for the Rams, 87%, and they still lost. Passing yards in a playoff game, Cousins 544 at Atlanta, winning the AFC title game. Peyton Manning 521 for Denver at Indianapolis against his former club, and Ken Anderson 504 yards against the Jets, but they still lost. But his team lost. Passing touchdowns, Cousins was 7 against New England, and he needed all 7 of them. Ted Felds had 6 touchdowns in one game, 1983 against the Raiders, winning. Marino 6 for the 85 Dolphins. Matty Ice 2017 Atlanta in a loss, and then Mahomes had 6 against the Texans. Interceptions in a playoff game, 7 by Eddie Miller. Giants against Green Bay 1940 playoffs. Otto Graham threw 6 picks against the Rams in 1952. And lost. Eddie LeBaron threw 6 interceptions for Washington in 1955 and lost. Jim Plunkett threw 6 interceptions for the Raiders against the Miami in January 1983 and still won the game 14-13. Unbelievable. Yeah, he threw 6 interceptions, but thanks to Marcus Allen's 2 touchdown runs, they beat the Dolphins and Don Strock. His passing attempts without an interception. 53 by Brady against the Ravens in 2020, when they narrowly beat the Ravens by a point. Aaron Brooks 51, second place against Philly in a loss. And then Phillip Rivers 51. Well, that's without an interception. Most times sacked. Bart Starr got sacked 10 times against Cleveland in 65, lost. Craig Borden 10 times for Denver at the Jets and lost. Phil Simms got sacked 10 times in 86 against the Rams. And Troy Aikman got sacked 10 times against Philadelphia. That's amazing. Most rushing yards in a playoff game. Willie Andrews 220 yards against Dallas, January 84, and they won the game. Tiki Barber 207 for the Giants at Seattle. And Lamar Smith 201 yards for Carolina at Seattle, getting the 200 mark in a win. Rushing touchdowns. Eddie Lee Avery 4 times against Dallas in the 82 playoffs. And there were people with 3. Lydell Mitchell did so on Christmas Day 77. Reverend Thomas against the Pats in 96. They still lost. Anyway, receiving yards in a playoff game. Deshaun Jackson 234 yards on 6 receptions against the Pats in the 2010 final, which they won 40-36. Mark Clayton 229 against the Broncos, January 1985. And when Demetrius Thomas 219 yards at Indianapolis when they won that game. Emmanuel Sanders when Denver faced Green Bay in the championship game and still lost. Receiving touchdowns 4. Bullet Bob Hayes 1967 against the Giants in a win. Wes Chandler 1983 for the Chargers in a win against the Raiders. Charles Johnson 4 touchdowns against the 95 Pats. And Julian Edelman 4 touchdowns for the Pats against the 2020 Ravens. Most field goals in a playoff game, 7 by Frank Corral for the Rams against Washington, all 21 points to take down the Redskins. And Will Lutz 7 field goals, against Green Bay, winning 28-25. Then Elliott was 6. Mike Vanderjagt had a 6 as well. Most field goals, no misses. Well, 7 for 7 was Frank Corral. Most 50-yard field goals made. Like Lowry, 4. All 4 of his field goals for the Chiefs at Pittsburgh were 50+. And Mike Vanderjagt, same thing, too, in 2000 against the Titans. Most punts in a playoff game, 12 by Ray Maloof for the Cardinals in 1948 against Philly in the championship game, which they won. Ray Guy, 12 punts for the Raiders against Buffalo, at Buffalo, and they won that 3-0 game. And John Goodson, 12 for Pittsburgh in 83 against New England when they lost. Dale Hatcher at 12. Barry Hamilton at 12. Kickoff return yards. 252 for Brad Smith against the Chargers, January 2010, and they lost. Andre Coleman, 205 for the 97 Chargers against Miami, and Darrell Harris, 196 for the 79 Dolphins against Pittsburgh. 5 return yards. 143 for Alvin Wyatt for the Raiders at Baltimore, which he was the hero, getting a pair of touchdowns. Jeff Burris, 137 yards for Buffalo versus New England in a loss. And Jerome McNeil, 134 yards for the 88 Browns versus New England in a victory. Most sacks in a playoff game. 4 by J.J. Watt against the Raiders in 2013, in which they went 47-24. And then some threes. L.C. Greenwood, Joe Klecko, Hugh Green. Wow, Hugh Green did it twice. Right. Keith Millard, Derek Thomas, lots of threes. Most interceptions in one game. 3 by Tommy Casanova against the 76 Pats for the Bengals in a win. And then there were a lot of 2s. Defensive touchdowns. 2 by Dave Elmendorf for the 77 Rams versus Detroit. And then there were a lot of most points scored in a playoff game. 5 touchdowns by Bob Hayes, Dub Jones, Eddie Lee Ivory, Wes Chandler, Charles Johnson, Edgerrin James, 4 touchdowns. Marion Barber had 4 touchdowns in the game. David Johnson, 4. Again, a pair of times. Edelman, Will Lutz, 22 points for the Saints against the Packers in that 28-25 game. 7 field goals and a point after. Frank Corral, 21 points. All the points were off of field goals. And the touchdowns, well, there were 5. 5 by Bob Hayes, Dallas against the Giants, 67. Dub Jones, 4 touchdowns for Cleveland against the 50 Bears. Eddie Lee Avery, 4 touchdowns against the 82 Cowboys. Wes Chandler, 4 touchdowns against the 83 Raiders. Charlie Johnson, 4 touchdowns against the 95 Pats. Edgerrin James, 4 touchdowns against the 2000 Jaguars. Marion Barber, 4 touchdowns against the 2008 Patriots. David Johnson, 4 touchdowns against the Packers, 2016 Packers. And then against the 2017 Saints, 4 touchdowns himself. Edelman, 4 touchdowns against the 2020 Ravens. That's all, and let's give you championships. Most points by one team in the championship. The Giants, 53 points against the 51 Rams. Washington's 52 points against the Pats. In the 2017 championship game, and the Pats had the 3rd highest amount with 49. The highest point total in a loss, mind you. Most points both teams. Washington, New England, 101 hands down. Denver, Minnesota, 99 final, 83 points. And Seattle, Pittsburgh in the 2018 final, 79 points in that game. Fewest points. Giants, 1937 title win over the Bears. Packers in 36 against Brooklyn. And Brooklyn over Portsmouth in 1933. 1965, Cleveland had to win in overtime. I forgot about that. Groza and Chandler with 2 field goals, and then Ryan Collins in overtime. Cleveland had to be. You also had the Colts being Dallas in the 68 finals, 16-3, and Dallas in the 96 final beating Kansas City 16-3. Most points on a shutout. Only 2 shutouts in the final. Denver took care of Minnesota 35-0 in 1990, and San Fran crushed Houston in 1971, 34-0. More points in one half for one team. Cleveland, 34 points in the 1960 final versus the Packers first half. Second half, Seattle, 33 points in the second half against Pittsburgh. Washington, 31 points in the first half against New England. The third, most points a half. Both teams, Denver, Minnesota, in the second half, 53 points in 99. Washington, New England, 52 points in the first half, and then 50 points for Seattle, Pittsburgh. Seattle. Most points in one quarter. Seattle, 33 points in the fourth quarter against Pittsburgh. Cleveland, 24 points in the second quarter against the 60 Packers. And the Giants, 21 points in the first. Lots of 21s. Most points in a quarter by both teams. Seattle and Pittsburgh 40 points in the fourth quarter. 2018, Washington, New England 38 points in the first quarter. Denver, Minnesota 35 points in the third quarter. And then New England, Philly in 2010, 34 points in the second quarter. Comebacks, well, Seattle came back from 25 down to win the championship against Pittsburgh in 2018. Green Bay was actually down by 20 in the 1944 final against Philly before coming back to win. And then Green Bay down by 2 touchdowns to the 63 Browns, and Pittsburgh down by 2 touchdowns against the 2002 Rams before cleaning house. Most passing attempts in a final. Roethlisberger 65 against Arizona and a loss. Kosar 60 against San Fran and a loss. Payton 53 against the 2000 Rams in a win, mind you. Completions. Cousins with 36. When Washington beat New England in 2017, Roethlisberger 2016 took second, 35, and then Kosar 34. Passing yards in the final. Payton 477 for Denver against Green Bay, and they still lost. Michael Vick 454 yards in 2010, which they won. And Aaron Rodgers 448 yards in that January 2015 game. That's almost 900 passing yards. No, it's all more than 900 passing yards combined. Passing touchdowns in a final. Cousins 7 against the Pats, which he needed every one of them. Bobby Brister, when Denver needed him after Elway got hurt, 5 touchdowns against the 99 fight against the Vikings in the 99 final and lost. Tom Brady 5 touchdowns in that Washington game, but they still lost. Passes interception. Eddie Miller 7 in the 1940 final. Otto Graham 6 in the 1952 final, and Eddie LeBaron 6 in the 1955 final. And lost. Yeah, Marino got picked up 5 times against the Bears. Most times sacked. 10 by Starr in the 65 final. And then 8. Barkowski got sacked 8 times in the 1984 in the final against Miami and lost. Wade Wilson got whipped 8 times against Denver. Sean Salisbury 8 times in Miami when Minnesota went to the final and lost. Oh yeah, most passing attempts without interception. Cousins with 50 in that 7 touchdown game. Staubach second with 42 for the Cowboys in a loss. And then a pair of 41s. Rushing yards in a final. Jim Brown 182 when Cleveland beat Green Bay in 63. Steve Van Buren in the 47 final against the Bears, 170 for second, and Eddie Price 161 for the Giants against the Rams for third. Bobby Humphrey 159. If you must know, receiving yards, Deshaun Jackson against the Pats, January 2010, 234. Emmanuel Sanders second, 215 in 2015, and Randall Cobb 194 against the Broncos. That crazy 2015 game. Well, 14-15, if you will. If you must know, most field goals in the final, 6 by Mike Vanderjagt in the 99-2000 final against the Rams, which they won 25-24. He needed all of them. Ray Poole, 4 field goals. Sam Baker, Don Chandler, Nick Falk for Dallas against New England when they won. Needed 4 of them. Most punts in a final. Well, longest field goal in a final. 55 yards by Lawrence Tynes when the Giants beat the Pats, 2012. Chris Boswell, 55 yards when Pittsburgh got taken care of Seattle by. And Gary Anderson, 54 yards for Pittsburgh. When they lost 31-28 to San Francisco, he needed a 54-yard field goal. Most punts in the final, 12 by Ray Merlin for the 1948 final. Barry Helton, 88-89 against Miami when they lost 13-10. He needed 12 punts. And Ray Brown, 11 for the Colts against the Steelers in 1958. Takeover return yards in the final. Ted Frisch, 174. Packers, Redskins, 1945. Sorry. David Palmer, 148 for Minnesota in 1999 against the Broncos in that key final. And Brandon Tate, 136 for the Pats in 2010 against Philly for yardage. punt return yards. Jerry Davis, 124 yards for the Cardinals in 1948 against the Eagles. Dana McLemore, 95 for the 87-88 for the Niners. And Bobby Joe Conrad, one return, 91 yards against the 61 Niners. Were there kick returns for touchdowns? Yep. Lenny Lyles did one for the Colts against Pittsburgh in the 58 final. Travis Williams did one in the 67 final against Dallas. Dave Hampton did one in the 72-73 final against Oakland. And Terry Metcalf did so for the Cardinals in the 75-76 final against Cincy. Punt return touchdowns in a final. It happened. Jerry Davis, Woodley Lewis, Jack Christensen, Bobby Joe Conrad, Daniel McLemore, Brian Westbrook, and Chad Morton did so. Most sacks in a final. Done 3 times. Hugh Green, 3 for Miami in the finals against San Francisco. Marco Coleman, 3 for Miami against Minnesota. And Dana Stubblefield, 3 for San Fran against the Pats. And all 3 were winners, if you must know. Interceptions in a final. 2, which Ken Strong, Bulldog Taylor, all listed people. Darian Gordon was last to do 2. Most points scored in a final individually, 24 by Dub Jones and Marion Barber. 4 touchdowns. Don Hudson had 19 points, but it was a 2-way thing. Mike Vanderjagt had 19 points by himself against the Rams. And let's finish it off by doing teams. We're going down every team. Atlanta, Super Bowl 7 champion, NFC champion 3 times. 3-time division winner. 2-time NFC West winner. Dan Henning won the most with 4 wins there. In the playoffs. Yeah, well, what are the playoffs? The Colts, NFC title game winners in 57, 64, 68. Super Bowl champs in 99, 05, and 09. Lots of division winners and all that. And 3-time AFC champion, but yeah, AFC champion. I think the Colts never lost in a final. I don't think. Baltimore, AFC champion in 06, but they lost. So yeah, the Colts were 3-0 in the finals combined, Baltimore and Indy. They won the division 6 times. New England, Super Bowl champion twice. Look at all the AFC champions, but only 2 championships. Kind of sucks, don't you think? But lots of AFC East championships. Buffalo, AFC champion 1973, but other than that, they couldn't pull it off. Carolina, NFC South champion 6 times. Only 3 playoff wins in their career. John Fox had 2 of them. 99, 2002, and 2005, they winners. Chicago, champions many times. NFC title game winners 35, 39, 42, and 56. They were NFL champion. And NFC champion twice. All that. Bears in their division. All stuff. Cincinnati, 2-time Super Bowl champion, 6-time AFC champion. Bill Johnson was 6-0 in his career. Cleveland, championship game winner, AFC champion, 86, 87, and 2020. Schottenheimer won 6 playoff games. Dallas, lots of Super Bowl champions and all of that. NFC champion many times over. Landry, 22 playoff wins. Dallas Texans / Yanks. Yeah, a lot of regular season and stuff. Playoffs. Broncos, 3-time Super Bowl champion, 5-time AFC champion. Dan Reeves, 7 playoff wins. Detroit. You see all their accomplishments. Green Bay, all their accomplishments. Houston, 3-time AFC South champions, but only 2 playoff wins. Kubiak, 2011 and 2012, but then they just basically couldn't do anything right. Jacksonville, 4-9 in their playoff appearance. Conklin got 2 wins in '97, but unfortunately, other than that, they just couldn't win games. Miami, Super Bowl champions 5 times over. Minnesota, 2-time champion Super Bowl, unlike in real life. Giants, lots of title wins themselves. 11 Conklin. The Jets, AFC champs, 81, 2000, 2004. But they couldn't get the job done. Herman Edwards had 4 wins, but in the end, they just couldn't do anything about it. Saints, 1 championship out of 3. Sean Payton, 12 playoff wins. The Raiders, 3-time AFC champion, but they couldn't pull it out. A lot of AFC West things, but they were only 19-27 in the playoffs. Philadelphia, you see their championships and all that. Andy Reid, 12 playoff wins. Pittsburgh, winning only a couple of times. Their long history. Tomlin got 12 of them. Chargers, 2-time Super Bowl champ, 2 out of 3, which was pretty good. Cordell got 9 playoff wins. San Francisco, all their titles, they won 8 of them, second most behind those pesky Packers. Most won 17 playoff games. Seattle, 2-time champions when they won the NFC thing. Pete Carroll doing his job. Rams, they've won some championships and all that. Tampa Bay, NFC champion 79. Only 5 playoff wins. Amazing. They've only won 5 playoff games. Like that. The Cardinals, a couple of titles. Cordell and Arians, 4 touchdowns, 4 wins each. The Chiefs, champs in 1990, 3-time AFC champions, all that. The Titans, only getting through twice. Washington, all their jobs, and that's it. So, I hope you enjoyed this encyclopedia look back and enjoyed yourself. Anyhow, I'm Jeff Diamond.